Uh, so first of all, I really want to apologize because I haven't tried slide, and my paper is also working in progress. And I'm looking at freedom of expression under the Taliban, which is, of course, many of us know that how much and to what extent it has been denied to Afghan citizens. You may have what has been shared. The agenda, the title has been slightly changed. You will see there a lens has been given to see the youth, the freedom of expression impact on youth. But I have kind of tried to just put it in a, because it was difficult for me to have this focus and to gather the data. So I have decided to see the suppression of freedom of expression more from social legal lens, which means that so I'm not going to say the story that, you know, how many media we had, 80% of media journalists, and how many were cracked down, and how many journalists lost their jobs, and the majority of them were women. We all know that. But what I'm looking at this paper is that to compare or to kind of examine the PVPV law, which is hugely a law that which is hugely not only in terms of media but also in terms of, like, you know, there is one of the article of Article 17, one of the phrases that you know, it's forbidden to publish reports that contains pictures of any inanimate object. So, and it was also implemented in Kandahar. Or the women voices were also forbidden, and it started to implement in Kandahar, but not in all other, like in Kabul, you would see differently. In Toulon News and others, but in local media it was. So I'm looking at to what extent the PVPV law, which is a law that is re-engineering and controlling the Afghanistan society, and particularly in terms of suppression of freedom of expression. And when I say freedom of expression, I adopt a wider definition of freedom of expression here, which is not just freedom of press, but also freedom of print. And we have seen that, you know, confiscation of books by the Taliban, particularly women's authors' book. So, of course, artistic expression is also one of the forms of freedom of expression, and we have seen that the day that the Taliban in power, they have destroyed, they have totally banned music from TV and radio, and also they have destroyed instruments. That area might be very huge. I will have a cursory look at it, but my main focus in this paper, which I am trying to publish it in a kind of maybe around 7,000 to 10,000 words for a journal article, is to see two things. First, media, and then censorship of print, and its impact, particularly on marginalized community, particularly women and youth. The material that I will try to use, I'm not going to, it's what Athena described her own methodology or interviews, because it will be a kind of brief journal article. But what I'm going to do is comparing the Afghanistan's legal obligation under international law, particularly Afghanistan is a state that has ratified, like, mostly the Convention of the Convention, culture, and particularly the accessing to the UN Charter in the member state, and it was also enshrined in the Afghanistan Constitution, and also to some extent it was embedded into Afghanistan society, particularly during Republic era, it will have a kind of legal and historical look at it, and then I will focus on PVPB law. It's to what extent it violates Afghanistan's international obligation, and secondly, how people look at it from media perspective. I will draw some materials from media publication, local media, international media, that they have reported on that. Also, some social media users, when it was a few months ago when the confiscations of book happened, authors such as Mujib Rahimi and others, they had Twitter spaces, they had tweeted about. So these are the raw materials that I will be using it. So it's kind of social legal lens with a focus of Afghanistan's obligation, and particularly examining the PVPB law in terms of censorship, in terms of engineering and controlling Afghanistan's society. I have kind of draw a very raw content of table of content, which I'm not going through, but I would also focus on that how freedom of expression and press kind of, used as a tool for resistance and advocacy by Afghans, particularly those that are in diaspora, or those media that are operating in diaspora, including Afghanistan and others, and how these platforms is also kind of given opportunity to Afghans and exiles to resist and advocate for Afghanistan. And then, of course, and I'm hoping that at the end of this research, I will have some recommendation that will be more like, is there any way that, under such kind of strict policies of the Taliban in a kind of totalitarian environment, we have seen that, there were 2 days ago a total down of the internet. So when the internet was back, so that was also kind of, I work for Afghanistan International and which is the media, local media outlet, and we have seen that, as soon as the internet was on back, our, the graph of like people that were viewing us, it went hugely back to what it was. So we have also seen that, through online platforms such as media and other platforms, there is that we are making impact, and measuring these impact in a very broad sense will be difficult to like capture or bring the kind of data to measure it in this. But what I'm hoping that, if at the end of this research, I will be able to conclude that what strategies we as Afghans and others that are supporting us, we can go or kind of advocate for that in exile under such censorship, we still could make a difference. Yeah, it's very kind of brief and formal kind of explanation of what I'm planning to do, and I'm very much hoping to have your constructive feedback, more than questions. So I will be able to enrich the paper. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nazifa. Seems like a really great research. I wanted to ask, what do you think would be the implication of this research? Like, what do you want to achieve by doing this research? And the second part of my question is, do you think this paper will have a contribution to the existing literature? Because I'm also doing research about Afghanistan, but sometimes you don't find existing literature about Afghanistan to place your paper in them and know the importance of what your paper could bring out. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's three questions. Okay. I two. Yeah, two. Okay. So in terms of what I'm hoping that the paper's conclusion will be, or the implication will be, it's so it looks like when I started like writing my introduction and stuff. So I was thinking of like maybe I will not be able to, or maybe when the paper is developed, and I'm hoping that I will be able to add to some theoretical framework in terms of, when you look at PVPV law and then the PVPV law itself, like, what they advocate a lot of issues in terms of Hanafi jurisprudence. And I think if I get time, I will be also able to see like more Sharia law in terms of like, what extent Sharia law has. There is a very interesting and very controversial debate among Muslim scholars that there are different categories of Muslim scholars that some are modernists that have adopted very just and broad definition of Islam that would, such as Fadl Rahman, An-Naim, and Masoud Badreen, that Masoud Badreen to some extent, he's also a scholar at SOAS, that, international human rights law and including human rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights or the Charter, or particularly all the legal instruments of international law is compliance with Sharia law. And but with the Taliban, it's just saying that Hanafi jurisprudence. So for me, it will be because many scholars, Muslim scholars, what my ideas are kind of aligned with, is that they adopt this definition of Sharia law, which is a different thing from Hanafi jurisprudence. And Hanafi jurisprudence is it's a way of understanding law, and it is so it will be very like in terms of theoretical or literature that I will be at. I think this paper will, if I get time, if I get to do more research, it can add more in a broader debate in terms of let the existing literature that scholars have already been producing, scholars whose work are intersecting with Sharia law, and then the debate of different type of kind of interpretation of Sharia law, and then it's some would say that Sharia law is not compliance with the international law, but they would say that there are instances that they can interact, and so this will be kind of to the existing literature. And in terms of implication for Afghanistan, I think it will be. I'm hoping that it will have a kind of policy implication for states, for maybe donors who are at the moment of supporting Afghan's academia or Afghan organizations who are working in this field, or maybe when I say academia, like particularly in terms of printing their work.
I have a question. Freedom of expression under the Taliban, from a social legal lens, what would you describe as almost the control for your experiment, or almost in comparison to what? Is there the standards set by the UN, or I know the University of Chicago has.
That's what did you say?
Yeah, almost compare freedom of expression. Are you holding your standards for freedom of expression from the UN or other international?
Yeah, it's a very important question that also I'm curious about, because there were during the Republic also there were one case which I think it was in Mazar or in Abdul Rahman. Was Abdul Rahman that he has, I think, printed some of the work. Yeah, probably, yeah. And then he was convicted of blasphemy. If you look at of course, like during the Taliban is so different. So during the Republic, that we would say that Afghanistan constitution was very, very much kind of modern constitution in the region. But in terms of the Article 3, the many judges or the judiciary were not able to kind of to adopt this broader and just interpretation of the constitution of Afghanistan that is aligned with the UN or the international legal instruments. So for me, it will be my measure will be, as I said, that my ideas and my kind of thoughts align with scholars who are arguing that human rights law is to many extent compliance with international law, and during the adopting many international UN documents, many Islamic countries they have they were pioneer at that time, including Iran, when Iran was, of course, not in this regime. So what I would adopt the just and broader interpretation of Sharia, and of course the measure will be the international instruments, including the UN Charter.
Excellent, thank you so much. So I think that will move to our